Welcome to UK Rail Journeys, Series 2. In this series I follow the original route of the Thames Clyde Express from London to Glasgow, and then visit Wemyss Bay and Mallaig before returning to London on the Caledonian Sleeper. Episode 3, Northward Bound. St Pancras was built to give the Midland a base in London. This was to be part of their route to Scotland. A section needed to be built in the north, from Leeds to the Scottish border. More about the building of that in another episode. This northern section opened to goods traffic in 1875 and passengers in 1876. From that time, the Midland had its route to Scotland. The Midland trains on the heavily graded route that was also 24 miles longer than the West Coast Main Line running from Euston were extremely comfortable. Frequently the expresses consisted of magnificent double-headed locomotives hauling a rake of Pullman and dining cars built by the United States Pullman Car Company. These Crimson Lake mid-morning trains of the Midland Railway to Edinburgh and Glasgow were important trains with, by 1907, the company's marketing department describing the scenic glories of the Settle to Carlisle section through the Eden Valley and also the Glasgow and South Western Railway route through Burns country. This continued even after the Midland became part of the London, Midland and Scottish Railway in 1923. After the 1923 grouping into the Big Four rail companies, there were economies of scale allowing the companies to run sophisticated publicity campaigns. Named trains were one part of this, wonderful poster art another part. The first Thames Clyde Expresses ran on the 26th of September 1927. There were two trains each day, one the 11:45 London St Pancras to Glasgow St Enoch, and the other the 9:20 a.m. Glasgow St Enoch to London St Pancras. The Thames Clyde was one of the LMS flying squad of 5 named trains. 2 from St Pancras, the Thames Clyde and the Thames Forth Expresses, and 3 from Euston, all variations on the Scott theme. The Thames Clyde was always the slowest of the principal express trains between London and Glasgow. By 1957, it had a reputation for gross and notorious unpunctuality and a schedule of interminable slowness. Over the years, there were changes to the route, with stops being added and removed. I'm attempting to follow, where possible, the original route. The other train from St Pancras, the Thames Forth Express, ran to Edinburgh Waverley. It was cancelled like the Thames Clyde and all other named trains in Britain during the Second World War. The named trains were restored in 1949 and the Thames Forth was renamed the Waverley in 1957. Starting from St Pancras, the original route for the Thames Clyde Express was by the former Midland Railway's main line through Leicester, an interchange station named Trent, Chesterfield and Sheffield as far as Leeds. Here the train reversed for a journey across the Pennines along the scenic Settle Carlisle route. After Carlisle, the train crossed into Scotland and used the former Glasgow and South Western Railway's Glasgow South Western line along a route providing a service to Annan, Dumfries and Kilmarnock before arriving at St Enoch station in Glasgow. Few people travelled the full length of the route, but it was a very important train for those travelling from the stations in the Midlands and Yorkshire. It couldn't compete for London to Scotland traffic with the faster trains on the West Coast Main Line. And in Scotland, the route was longer than the West Coast Main Line. By the time the name had been restored in September 1949, the effects of British Railway's regional divisions, mining subsidence between Sheffield and Leeds, and the rostering of underpowered locomotives meant that the performance of the Thames Clyde Express was worse than in 1939. In 1962, the Thames Clyde took 8 hours and 50 minutes for the northbound journey, leaving London at 10:15 a.m, then calling first at Leicester London Road at 11:52 a.m, then Sheffield Midland at 1:19 p.m, Leeds City at 2:25 p.m. The 39 miles from Sheffield to Leeds taking over an hour because of subsidence-induced speed restrictions. The train then crossed the Settle and Carlisle section, reaching Carlisle at 4:30 p.m, and finally St Enoch station at 7:05 p.m. When the Waverley was cancelled in 1968, additional stops were added to the Thames Clyde route, making it even longer. These included Nottingham, Skipton, Hellifield, Settle and Appleby. A locomotive class, strongly associated with the St Pancras to Leeds portion of the route, was the Stanier Jubilees, with many based at the Kentish Town shed. In 1961, British Railways began to replace steam with diesel power on the Thames Clyde route. Class 45 locomotives built in Derby and Crewe between 1960 and 62 became the norm on the main lines out of St Pancras. Initially, the diesels only worked south of Leeds, but from 1961 they began working over the Settle Carlisle route and into Scotland. The Class 45s gave wonderful service, and the engines provided motive power to the Thames Clyde and its successor, the Nottingham-Glasgow service. The nickname for the engines is the Peaks. Class 45s were an updated and more powerful version of the Class 44 locomotives, which had carried the names of mountains, earning the class the nickname. They were named after the three peaks of Yorkshire, Ingleborough, Pennygent and Whernside. The 45s were withdrawn between 1981 and 1989. 11 survive on preserved railways, and one, number 45112, Royal Army Ordnance Corps, is passed for use on the main line. There was no fixed number of coaches on the Thames Clyde, but 8, including a restaurant car, appears common. There might be an additional carriage between St Pancras and Leeds, and on the southbound service a coach for Nottingham was often detached at Trent. The kitchen was stocked before departure at either St Pancras or St Enoch, with the chef having a choice of 6 menus. There were 9 on-board staff, with 6 staff preparing and serving meals, a guard, a ticket collector and a lady attendant. The guard and engine crew changed at Leeds, whilst the catering staff travelled the entire route. They worked the return train the next day. After leaving St Pancras and Glasgow, the dining car offered morning coffee. Sadly, it has been impossible to take a through train between St Pancras and Glasgow since 1975, when the train was cancelled. A train continued to run from Nottingham to Glasgow along the Thames Clyde route for some years, and I travelled on this train in early 1977 from Wakefield to Glasgow and return to attend a training course. As I said earlier, I am attempting to follow, where possible, the original route. At the time of recording the material for this series, the longer distance express services of the East Midlands Railway were using Class 222 Meridian 5 or 7 car diesel-electric multiple unit trains with a top speed of 125 miles an hour. Class 222 is part of the Bombardier Voyager family. They're powered by Cummins QSK-19 750 horsepower diesel engines and can travel around 1,350 miles between each refuelling. They're maintained at the dedicated Derby Etches Park depot, just south of Derby Railway Station. On a Class 222 East Midlands Railway intercity train, which is heading to Nottingham, though I'm getting off at Leicester. The train is very crowded this afternoon. We're now pulling out of St Pancras station. As we leave St Pancras, the clock tower of St Pancras Church is on our left, and on the right are the famous gas holders that were converted to flats. The Regent's Canal, which we've just crossed, with its St Pancras Basin, and the station's Gothic water tower. We next pass the Heidelberg Hansen ready-mix concrete depot, and then, after passing under some other tracks, we enter the 308-yard Camden Road tunnel. We've just passed through Kentish Town station and the site of the old Kentish Town engine sheds. These opened in 1875 for locomotives working out of St Pancras. The engine sheds hosted the engines used for the London to Leeds leg of the Thames Clyde Express. The sheds closed in 1963, and today some of the surviving buildings are used by Murphy, the civil engineers, whilst much of the rest of the site has been redeveloped. In this area of London we pass under a number of rail tracks, with more joining our line at junctions. It's amazing, but it seems possible to travel anywhere from any railway station on the London network because there are so many interconnecting tracks. We pass through Belsize Tunnel. There are 2 tunnels allowing 4 tracks to operate, and then at speed through West Hampstead Thameslink station.
Good afternoon, welcome on board the 1305 East Midlands Railway service from London to Pancras to Nottingham, calling at Kettering, Market Harbour, Leicester, Loughborough, East Midlands Parkway, Beeston, final station call Nottingham.
We've now just passed the sidings that cover the site of the former Cricklewood engine sheds. These house the Midland Railway's goods locomotive. Today, East Midlands and Thameslink trains reside here. We now pass under the North Circular Road at Staples Corner and then run along the southern end of the M1, passing through Hendon, home of the Royal Air Force Museum and the Hendon Police College. We leave the motorway at the site of the old Scratchwood ash sidings, used as a dumping ground for thousands of tons of locomotive firebox ash. Today the sidings have been replaced by the depressing Scratchwood, or should I call it the London Gateway service station. Now passing a freight train made up of tanker cars. I suspect that the speed we're travelling at is faster than any Thames Clyde Express reached on this section of track. We are definitely going much faster than the cars on the motorway. We're heading from town now towards country. Trees around us, open grassland. Still very suburban, but getting more pleasant. We're now in the Ep03 tunnel, and we pass from Middlesex to Hertfordshire as we travel through this tunnel. Above us is the first farmland since leaving St Pancras. Through Elstree and Borehamwood Station, and then we carry on towards Radlett. Lots and lots of new housing. Definitely commuter land. At Radlett, we're joined on the left-hand side by the A5, originally the Roman Watling Street. Watling Street ran from Dover through Canterbury, London and St Albans, and north to today's village of Wroxeter. Although a village today, Wroxeter was one of the largest cities in Roman Britain. Its true size can be judged from the scale of the surviving defences and ramparts. It was founded in the mid-1st century AD as a legionnaire's fortress and became a town around 90 AD. There are a lot of freshly cut tree stumps on the embankments. Network Rail must have been very busy over the winter, removing trees overhanging the tracks. Whether to stop them falling onto the tracks in bad weather or just stop leaves on the line, I'm not quite sure. We're now passing a field with what must be winter barley in it, growing strongly, a deep green. To my right, I can see a bright yellow field, or what will be a bright yellow field in a few weeks, just coming into flower.
Welcome aboard, passengers who've joined us just before departure from London St Pancras. First class is in the blue seated areas at the front of the train in coaches G for Golf and D for Delta. Standard class is in the grey seated areas at the centre and rear of the train in coaches A for Alpha, B for Bravo, C for Charlie, and the rear of coach D for Delta. A reminder, if you see anything suspicious or any unattended items on board, please alert a member of our onboard team. You can also text the British Transport Police on 61016. Remember the 3 S's: see it, say it, sorted. Our safety information is provided in the vestibule doorway areas adjacent to exit doors. Once again, this is the 1305 East Midlands Railway service from London St Pancras, calling at Kettering, Market Harbour, Leicester, Loughborough, East Midlands Parkway, Beeston. Final station call Nottingham 1450.
The man with the microphone takes this opportunity to thank the passengers and crew on my East Midlands Railway trains between London and Sheffield for their assistance in making this podcast on Thursday the 9th of May 2024. This podcast is produced and published by the Mr. T Podcast Studio. Thank you very much for listening. And please join me again in a couple of weeks for the next instalment